is that one day someone's going to invent a time machine, and that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it.
Is time travel possible? The answer might surprise you. Yes, and you're already doing it. Right now, you're hurtling into the future at a steady rate of 1 second per second. Whether you're watching paint dry or wishing for more hours to catch up with a friend, you're always moving through time at the same speed. So time travel is real, just not in the way you might think. We'll dive deeper into that later in the video, but first, let's pivot to an incident so bizarre, it will leave you stunned. Meet Sergei Ponomarenko, a man who baffled everyone around him. When stopped by the police, he handed over an ID that looked perfectly legitimate, except it was issued by a country that no longer existed, the Soviet Union. Was Sergei a time traveler? His story is just the beginning, and there are more mind-bending incidents to uncover. Who is this strange figure leaping through different eras? What are the mind-twisting paradoxes that come with time travel? Stick around as we unravel the astonishing first-hand accounts of journeys through time. On April 23, 2006, in the bustling streets of Kyiv, Ukraine, a man appeared in an outdated Soviet military uniform carrying an old camera. His presence was jarring. His attire alone was enough to raise eyebrows, given the historical tensions between Ukraine and Russia. It was as provocative as someone donning a Nazi uniform in Israel. The man's strange behavior drew immediate attention, and people's uneasy glances turned into whispers. The tension rose until a nearby police patrol intervened. Approaching him, the officers asked for identification. What they received was beyond baffling. A Soviet Union ID, a relic from a country that had ceased to exist years ago. This man, who appeared to be in his 20s, carried an ID that suggested he was born in 1932. The name on the ID, Sergei Ponomarenko. His story only got stranger. When asked the date, Sergei confidently replied, April 23, 1958. The police were confused. Faced with such a bizarre claim, they decided Sergei needed psychiatric evaluation and took him to a mental health facility. At the hospital, Dr. Paul Krakow, a psychologist, took charge of Sergei's case. Sergei's fascination with his surroundings was palpable. Everything seemed alien to him. During their conversation, Sergei insisted he was 25 years old and recounted a bizarre tale. He spoke of a bright day, a walk with his camera, and a bell-shaped object hovering in the sky. He snapped a photo, and suddenly, he found himself on the unfamiliar streets of modern-day Kyiv. Dr. Krakow, intrigued and skeptical, examined Sergei's antique Yashica Flex camera. To delve deeper, he enlisted Vadim Poyser, a professional photographer. Vadim was astonished to find Sergei using a camera model from 1953 with a film reel dating back to 1956, both in perfect condition. Vadim developed the photos, and what he found was astonishing. The images depicted 1950s Kyiv streets and a bell-shaped UFO, just as Sergei had described. One photo even showed Sergei himself in 1956, looking exactly as he did now. As the photos were developed, Sergei's story seemed increasingly plausible. The mystery deepened. Sergei was kept under constant watch, with security cameras monitoring him around the clock. Later that day, after developing the photographs, the search for answers led them back to Sergei's room. But Sergei was gone, vanished without a trace. The police reviewed the security footage, expecting to see how he slipped away. Instead, they found footage of Sergei entering the room, but no sign of him leaving. Confounded, they checked every nearby camera. Sergei had genuinely disappeared. Dr. Paul proposed a new strategy: scrutinize the photos for clues about Sergei's whereabouts. As they examined the pictures, one stood out. Sergei was standing close to a woman. Dr. Krakow enlisted the local police's help to investigate further. Their search led them to a household registration file for Sergei, revealing he had mysteriously vanished in 1960. The woman in the photo was identified as Sergei's wife, Valentina Kurik, now 74. The police quickly tracked her down for questioning. Valentina was taken aback when she saw the photo from Sergei's camera, identical to one from her album dated 1958. Dr. Krakow explained the bizarre sequence of events, leaving her stunned. She confirmed that Sergei had indeed disappeared for several days in April 1958, returning with a strange anxiety and an unwillingness to explain his absence. This odd behavior continued until his final disappearance in 1960. Before his ultimate vanishing act, Sergei confided in Valentina about his time in 2006 during those missing days. He had been trapped in the future, and after sharing this extraordinary story, he disappeared again. Valentina never saw him again, but received a letter from him with a photograph of a bearded man, seemingly in his 40s. The photo was taken by the Dnipro River, yet the buildings in the background didn't match those of the present day. This revelation suggested that Sergei was not only in the future, but also found a way to communicate with the past. The evidence pointed to Sergei being a time traveler, raising questions that boggled the mind. How is this possible? Is time travel real? Dr. Krakow also speculated that Sergei might have been abducted by extraterrestrials, whisked away to another galaxy at light speed, and then dropped back on Earth at the wrong time. For Sergei, mere seconds could have translated to decades. This theory might explain what happened when Sergei photographed the UFO. Could he have inadvertently slipped into a wormhole or a rift in space-time by snapping that picture? Perhaps the UFO had the energy to cause such a phenomenon. But why Sergei? Was he an unintended victim, caught in the crossfire as the ship passed by? And if so, how did he find his way back to 2006 without the spaceship's help? How did he manage to travel to the future to send that message to his wife? The deeper we dig into this story, the more questions emerge. Yet there's a crucial detail to remember. This narrative comes from a television series called Aliens, which aired in 2012 on the Ukrainian channel 1+1. The series spanned 10 episodes, with this particular tale featured in the third episode titled Time Traveler. Each episode began with a disclaimer stating that the theories aimed to reconstruct scenes related to controversial topics and should not be taken as fact. Now let's dive into the mysterious tale of the man from Taured. This bizarre story kicks off on a sweltering day in July 1954 at Haneda Airport, also known as Tokyo International Airport. A Caucasian man with a beard arrived, speaking fluent French, Japanese, and several other languages. So far, nothing too strange, right? Things took a turn when he handed over his passport. The Japanese immigration officer noticed something off. The passport seemed authentic, but it was issued by a country called Taured, a place that didn't exist on any map. The man was taken in for questioning. During the interrogation, the traveler insisted that Taured was a real country, nestled between France and Spain, and had existed for over 1,000 years. When shown a map, he pointed to the area known as the Principality of Andorra, confused as to why his homeland was labeled differently. The standoff was intense. The Japanese officers were adamant that Taured did not exist, while the traveler firmly believed otherwise. What was going on here? Was this a case of mistaken identity, or was there something more otherworldly at play? The officers, suspicious of the man's strange story, detained him, suspecting he might be a criminal. They put him up at a nearby hotel for the night, posting 2 guards outside his room to ensure he didn't escape. But when they checked on him the next morning, he was gone. There was no trace of him, and all his personal documents, which could have validated his story, had vanished as well. This disappearance has sparked various theories. One compelling explanation is that the man from Taured accidentally slipped through a parallel dimension, ending up at Haneda Airport. According to this idea, there's a parallel Earth almost identical to ours, except the area we know as Andorra is known as Taured there. Another intriguing theory suggests he was a time traveler from the future, though this raises even more questions than it answers. Was this man truly from another dimension or time? You decide, all right, we've explored two supposed time travelers, but what about a time-traveling device? The Vatican's history brims with secrets, and none is more bizarre than the legend of the chronovisor. The chronovisor is said to be a device that allows its user to see through time. While its existence has never been proven, a 2002 book by Vatican priest Father Francois Brune claims otherwise. According to Brune, the chronovisor was created by Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk. Ernetti allegedly kept this device under wraps until the early 1960s, when he confided in Brune. He revealed that 12 scientists, including the famous physicist Enrico Fermi and former Nazi scientist Werner von Braun, collaborated to build it. Constructed from cathode rays, antennae, and metals that received sound and light signals across all wavelengths, the chronovisor reportedly allowed these scientists to document historical events. This machine could potentially validate biblical teachings by providing a first-hand glimpse into the past. Ernetti claimed that this extraordinary group of scientists joined forces to uncover the mysteries of history. Among them was Fermi, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and von Braun, whose work with NASA helped America reach the moon. According to Ernetti, the chronovisor had multiple antennae, including 3 made of mysterious metals that captured sound and light waves across their entire spectrums. A direction finder was tuned to the specific era one wished to observe, displaying the scene on a screen and recording it for posterity. Rather than being a time machine, the chronovisor acted as a window into the past. Ernetti described it as functioning like a television, catching echoes from bygone days that had been floating in space, and he claimed to have witnessed some astonishing events. Ernetti recounted seeing Marcus Tullius Cicero's speech to the Roman Senate in 63 BC. He made increasingly bold claims, such as witnessing the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. From the founding of the Roman Empire to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Ernetti asserted that he and his team had glimpsed some of the most significant events in biblical history. Now, some say that Father Pellegrino Ernetti confessed to fabricating the entire story before his death on April 8, 1994, but this claim remains hotly contested. With von Braun, Fermi, Ernetti, and Brune all now deceased, the tantalizing mystery of the chronovisor endures. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what science says about time travel. Is it possible? Science says yes, but probably not in the way you're imagining. In the movies, time travelers usually step into a machine and, poof, vanish, reappearing among cowboys, knights, or dinosaurs. What these films depict is essentially time teleportation. Scientists don't think this kind of instant time hopping is likely in the real world, but they also don't dismiss time travel as mere science fiction. In fact, the laws of physics might actually allow it, though the devil is in the details. Traveling to the near future is straightforward. You're doing it right now at the rate of 1 second per second, and physicists say this rate can change. According to Einstein's special theory of relativity, time's flow depends on how fast you're moving. The faster you travel, the slower time passes. And Einstein's general theory of relativity adds that gravity also affects the flow of time. The stronger the gravity, the slower the clock ticks. Dave Goldberg, a cosmologist at Drexel University, explains it like this: near massive bodies, like the surface of neutron stars or even here on Earth, though it's a tiny effect, time runs slower than it does far away. Now imagine someone hanging out near the edge of a black hole where gravity is incredibly strong. For them, only a few hours might pass, while 1,000 years go by for someone on Earth. If they return to Earth, they would have effectively traveled into the future. Goldberg sums it up. That is a real effect. That is completely uncontroversial. Now, what about the tricky business of going back in time? It's a lot thornier than just getting ripped apart inside a black hole. Scientists have toyed with a few theories on how it might work, and have been wrestling with the paradoxes of time travel in general relativity for decades. One of these is the infamous grandfather paradox. This concerns self-inconsistent solutions in a timeline's history caused by traveling back in time. Say you went back and killed your grandfather because he created a dynasty that ruined the world. You figure if you eliminate him before he meets your grandmother, your entire family line, including you, would vanish, and the world might be a better place. But if you did that, you'd never be born, and therefore you wouldn't be able to go back and do the deed. A classic paradox. Then there's the bootstrap paradox. This is where an object, person, or piece of information sent back in time creates an infinite loop, having no discernible origin and existing without ever being created. Relativity does offer some theoretical options for backward time travel, but these are much more speculative. One such concept is creating a closed time-like curve, a path through space and time that loops back on itself. A person following this path would eventually find themselves at the same time and place they started. This idea was first described by logician Kurt Gödel in a 1949 study, and many have followed since. However, this approach isn't very promising for several reasons. We don't know if such paths exist anywhere in the universe. It's all purely theoretical, with no solid evidence to back it up. There is another wild theory. In 1991, physicist Richard Gott introduced a mind-bending idea. What if two cosmic strings zipped past each other in opposite directions? His calculations showed this could create closed time-like curves, looping around the strings, potentially allowing time travel. Sounds cool, right? But there's a catch. Cosmic strings are hypothetical phenomena believed to have formed in the early universe. So far, none have been detected. Then there's the concept of wormholes. According to general relativity, space-time could be folded like a piece of paper, creating a tunnel that serves as a shortcut between two distant points. Wormholes are mathematically possible, but we have no evidence they actually exist. Even if wormholes do exist, they would be incredibly short-lived. Often described as two black holes connected, a wormhole would have an immense gravitational field and would collapse under its own gravity. Theoretically, these problems could be solved with an enormous amount of negative energy. Negative energy might occur on the tiniest scales, within spaces smaller than atoms. An energy field typically has positive energy, but it can contain minuscule pockets of negative energy. Expanding these tiny pockets could theoretically stabilize a wormhole, but scientists believe that's not feasible. While Einstein's theories make time travel seem almost impossible, some researchers have suggested alternative solutions. These ideas, however, share a common, significant flaw. The intense gravitational forces involved would likely be fatal to any time traveler. One such idea comes from astronomer Frank Tipler, who proposed the Tipler cylinder. Imagine taking matter 10 times the mass of the Sun and rolling it into a long, dense cylinder. According to the Anderson Institute, a time travel research organization, this cylinder would resemble a black hole that has passed through a spaghetti factory. By spinning this cosmic spaghetti at a few billion revolutions per minute, a nearby spaceship, following a precise spiral path around the cylinder, could theoretically travel back in time on a closed, time-like curve. The catch? For the Tipler cylinder to work, it would need to be infinitely long or made of some unknown form of matter. Right now, creating endless interstellar pasta is far beyond our reach. So considering all these theories and research, do you think time travel is possible as these stories suggest? Or is it just another utopian fantasy? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss it.